So I'm watching The Green Book, um, and it's a strange movie. I didn't expect, to be honest, a mafia movie. I mean, there is some mafia element. That well, it's not explicit that they are, but obviously they kind of are. These mobsters, but likely. Yeah. Anyway, but so I'm not entirely sure if this Scandinavian guy. It's very funny. He's Scandinavian and yet he's trying to pass off as Italian. I don't know if he is explicitly part of them. Maybe he's sort of hired hand or something. Anyway, yeah, it has some interesting moments, some funny moments, like when he told him to ask for some quiet time, and he just kept on going about the phrase "quiet time" itself. That's quite funny. And then when he said it about the orphans, at first I thought he was lying. I don't know. He just said that's Orpheus, and then he said the children were demons in the bowels of hell, and he replied there must have been some naughty children. Uh, I didn't expect humor in this movie, to be honest, but there is some. It seems there is some. Oh, and him saying that he'd piss on the floor if they put the house food on. There is sentiment there. Yes, this is the sentiment, isn't it? Counts mostly. Yeah. Sensible sentiment. Yeah, I gotta say. Yeah. One doesn't really know why. You know. I mean, politeness only goes so far, doesn't it? I mean, if it's not reciprocated, then it shouldn't be there in the first place, shouldn't it? And the bit with the clinging of cowbells at the end of Shostakovich. Quite quite good comedic timing there, gotta say. Um, with regards to PS notes, yeah, I mean, earlier with the bullshit with two T's was kind of funny as well, but not as much as cowbell bit there. Um, of course, when it comes to writing letters, it's not quite. I mean, he didn't seem to raise any objections, but I mean, someone else dictating a letter written to one's own partners, and I mean, she was crying then, and it's not even they're not even his words, so it's a bit strange. But yeah, anyway. So you see, though, besides the comedy, the little there is, I mean, it's mostly not a comedic movie, but there is a bit, or yeah, mostly drama. But you see, the thing is, there's also this thing where things happen and there is no seeming resolution to them, and um, no appropriate resolution at least. So there is no sense of catharsis, and that is usually needed in a film. I think usually there is such a thing. I mean, it seems like a simple thing, some A happens and then B resolves it. Now, in this case, I mean, there is still a resolution in inverted commas, but they're not. They're sort of a backing out, sort of like flight instead of fight. An escape, and it's not quite a resolution per se. It's more like just that. So it doesn't feel like it's equal in strength to what caused the issue in the first place. So it doesn't feel as satisfying in a movie. Usually movies have this thing where there is a moment of catharsis, and many moments here do not have such a thing. Unlike, say, that incident with the piano, when there wasn't a Steinway, but clearly that happened more because he insulted him. But there was still, I mean, a sense of catharsis, I suppose, in a sense. Uh, Now, I'm not asking, for constant violence, but if there is a situation that causes that there, where violence is seeded, then it's a bit of a just it feels cheap to just resolve it by flight in a sense, you know. Oh, but that bit where he gave them the middle finger, yeah, the fact that he did it without even looking at them was quite it expressed something, I suppose. It's like a ninja middle finger or something. Yeah, it's like it's like he's looking from the side but not looking. It's maybe he was looking in the mirror. Not sure. It was I guess a small. Yeah, it was what it was. Oh, and where they were clapping, and suddenly we get rain, which sounds like clapping. That's clever. And yeah, the bit with the police there, what happened? And that was a mixed bag. I mean, as he said though, he did it because he insulted him mainly, just like the scene with the piano. But it was, it did deliver a certain catharsis in the sense, unlike a couple of other scenes, like in the bar and such. And then of course how it got resolved was very interesting. It was sort of it went beyond, but like you said, then there is no dignity in it, so that makes sense. It's a subtle scene. uh, Now then of course he goes back down to sort of lowbrow humor, but the comedic timing is perfect when he says, something's been bothering him. That Pittsburgh has been a major disappointment. That's quite something. Doesn't have much humor, this movie, but what it does have is quite something. I mean, it's there, it has timing. It's not mainly a comedy, obviously. And yeah, so I finished it, and it was interesting, I suppose one could say. Yeah, no, it was. But, I mean, it's based on a real story, I'm assuming, so I suppose it's constrained by reality, I suppose one could say. So I don't know if they did exactly everything that happened in real life, in which case, I mean, real life doesn't have catharsis there. So it's not just, just what happens there. So yeah, but ultimately, I mean, doesn't have, doesn't have, I mean, I can see why people would like it. And it's interesting, an interesting tale by itself. And obviously, it has high production values and such as a film. I cannot deny that there, but it's um the catharsis sometimes still is still missing. Not at the end, maybe. At the end, there was, but I don't know if people just sort of base their opinion just on. I mean, the ending is obviously important. It's just, sometimes it seems to me like people just rate something or just think highly of something just based on the ending. I mean, overall, it's interesting to watch. It was an interesting watch, and I'm not saying it's low quality or anything, but well, I don't know. I just it's like a documentary in a way. It's kind of similar, and obviously it's still told in a narrative sort of format in this, but it's still much more of a documentary. And I don't know. With a documentary, it's sort of a different mindset one has than with a movie, and it's just uh, and I'm not entirely sure. I mean, obviously there is characterization, there is development, there is cinematography, there is poignancy. Yes, there is. So I'm not denying it. But I don't know. It's do is all people want to watch reality. I'm not saying this should be a case of escapism, but it's remarkable how people rate reality so highly. Well, kind of funny, I guess. I don't know. I just maybe this is more of a commentary on how I view things. But all right, well, let's just say, I mean, in comparison to some other movies, right? In comparison to Goodfellas, for example, which also has violence, a lot more, but let's say they both have a bit of violence. Goodfellas has loads more, but obviously, what's also in common is the fact that that he's supposed to be Italian, and this he's not really Italian, so in reality. Anyway, he did have an accent. I mean, it's remarkable. I don't suppose he really has an Italian accent in reality, but clearly he trained for it, like a sea, like he said. But in Goodfellas, obviously, they're also supposed to be Italian and such. But obviously, it's more about um, gangsters and such. Goodfellas, though, in comparison, has no redeemable quality, in my opinion, and that is truly a case of what exactly was is so highly rated here. I just have no idea, honestly. Here, on the other hand, with this one, oh, I can believe how I can see. I mean, it's much closer. So I mean, my opinion of this is much closer to the average person's opinion, apparently, average rater at least, than it would ever be with Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas only had violence, and that's it, full stop. I mean, what's so special about it? I don't get it. This, sure enough, began with violence, but then it had development, and yeah, the character changed, and it had good music. It had some catharsis as well. Goodfellas practically had none of it, unless you consider it just didn't. It's also based on a true story, though, so I guess it's whatever happened in real life, I guess. Um, but I don't get why people seem to think that some tales are worth so much, are so valuable, when I don't get it. I mean, I get this, but I don't get this. On the other hand, something like V for Vendetta. Well, obviously it's fictional, so they can take liberties with everything, much more so. But it's much more of a perfect movie in my opinion. So I can see why it's so highly rated. Um, but it's so different. Oh, so it is different from this and Goodfellas. But obviously, these are constructed by reality. So I admit that. But it's just so different. Obviously, it is. I mean, cathartic in the sense that things are resolved neatly, but that's because mainly it's fictional. It's a comic book, so yeah, sure enough. Um, but I don't know. I just obviously visually it's much more appealing as well, but that's also because it's fictional, so they can have whatever costumes they want. I mean, I personally thought I enjoy that sort of thing more than this is not. I would never say this is an enjoyment sort of thing, unless that it's those bits where piano is being played. But actually, for a movie about a pianist, there aren't many of those moments. Actually, there are far and few in between. But they're enjoyable. Other than that, though, everything else that happens isn't per se enjoyable. I mean, sure enough, they're growing their relationship. That's enjoyable to see, but it's still painful in a way. Not as painful as his relationship with society at large, obviously. Um, but it's still. I mean, I wouldn't describe it as enjoyable. Just like I would never absolutely ever describe what's it called Schindler's List, by the term ever. Um, yeah, incidentally, both actors remind me of each other. At least the acting seems sort of similar, but also, I mean, so similar motivators, I suppose, in terms of money and later on. But anyway, it's also based on real life as well. But that's another thing. I mean, I don't know how people. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sure enough, both have this glimmer of hope. Obviously, there's it's more that's more available here than that other film. But when a film is so mired in doom, um, uh, obviously it's this is all historical, so history is just full of negativity. One cannot deny that. Then I just wonder. I mean, how if people are so if they're so positive about negativity, essentially, uh, why? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they do, but I suppose are documentaries also so highly rated? I personally don't rate documentaries because I mean I don't see the point of rating what's fact. I mean, sure enough, I guess you could rate how the documentary is made, production values, etc. But other than that, it's just showing fact, or at least what's hopefully fact. And you cannot really rate fact. It's just reality. With movies, it's different. I mean, you get a variety of things that can be calibrated, not simply static like reality is with documentaries. But some of these sort of movies are more of a documentary. I mean, sure they're presented in a drama format, in a movie format, but they're much more of a documentary than they are movies. I guess um, truly enjoyable movies. I guess would be fictional, in my opinion, simply because there is more. Yeah, I suppose. Then again, I mean, you know, Goodfellas may be based in real life, but I'm sure there's loads of fictional versions as well, and they're equally as violent. So I'm not saying fiction is necessarily uh, positive, but or even non-documentary if it's not reality. So I'm not saying. I don't know. I'm just anyway. I guess this still didn't have as much violence. I'm just saying it did, but it began there, and then there was a change, sure enough. So I don't know. Does that mean that something is missing? No, no, it doesn't. I mean, things changed. You know, he invited him at the end. They hug each other. It's a brilliant ending. I give it that. I can see why people come away from this film thinking positively. But overall, I cannot help but think that reality, even present reality, and this is supposed to be set in the 60s, and that's 60 years ago. So it hasn't changed, and that makes it so depressing. Obviously, it's not. This is not about the movie itself, but when one is depressed, then I don't know. I just, I personally at least do not tend to come out from something positively because of that. I mean, it doesn't reflect on the movie though. But as I say, it's more of a documentary than a movie, in my opinion. Movies, I guess, as I say, are closer to fictional usually. So it's a bit of a difficult thing, I always get this sort of dilemma when it comes to these things. It's obviously you cannot change reality unless you just, you're using your artistic license to embellish facts and such. Now, you see, for example, saying that at the end there, they had another police encounter where instead of the previous negative encounter, they get an actually helpful encounter. Now, I'm sure it's possible that these sort of things happen, but honestly, statistically, how likely is that to happen? For a police car to stop a car only to tell them that they have a tire down? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm not personally a car driver, so I would know for sure, I only ever cycled. When I cycle, though, I can very easily notice a flat tire. So I'm not entirely sure what it is with cars. I mean, surely there's something, an indicator or otherwise, that points towards a flat tire. Otherwise, it's just dangerous, isn't it? Especially if you're going down a hill or something, or up. But so in the first case, I mean, I'm not sure how it's even possible for a flat tire to go unnoticed. But I don't really know the details with that, so I couldn't comment better than this. So anyway, besides that, I mean, how likely is it for a positive police? I can see how, I mean, but I'm just saying that this might be artistic license. Now, sure enough, it's done to accentuate the positive, one might say. But how realistic is it? Because this film is implying that people get 50% negative police encounters and 50% positive. I mean, there weren't exactly many. Sorry, the sample size wasn't exactly big here. It was a 2-hour film, and they got stopped twice, so they only have a sample size of 2. But if we extrapolate from that, even though it's a small sample size, I seriously doubt that the ratio is like that in real life. I mean, I haven't seen statistics, so then again, I'm not entirely sure they collect such statistics. I guess they could collect opinions, people's opinions based on how they rate the encounters they have, whether they're positive or not. But I just doubt that it's half and half like that. I'm assuming it's more negative than positive, but I'm just assuming. I'm just saying this might be a case of the film embellishing facts. It's not. It's not. I mean, it doesn't go terribly far into propaganda or anything, but it tries to balance it out in a way. So I don't know. It might be a bit unrealistic in this sense, but only a bit. I mean, in an ideal world, that's all police encounters are about, right? Helping with criminals, not actually being one themselves. And sure enough, telling you if you have a flat tire. But obviously, that's not the real world. And the US in particular has a problem with the institution. Uh, um, Although I don't have a personal experience because I've never been there. Anyway, but I'm just saying that this. I mean, I'm not saying that this film, it leans one way or another, but it might present a bit of a false balance, false, But overall, even from what you've seen in the movie, the negative outweighs the positive. Clearly, I mean, there was so much more negativity than there is positivity, right? And even though at the end, so yeah, sure enough, at the end you get this positive police encounter, but before that, you go out that scene in the restaurant, and I'm not saying that didn't feel like it was. I mean, if it really happened like that, obviously it depends on ultimately what happened in your life. Unless, of course, they're taking an artistic license, as mentioned previously. But sure enough, the way it happened, there was a sense of catharsis. So I'm not blaming it for like the scene in the bar or such where there wasn't, um, or the scene in the where Tony tried to bribe the police. That was another one where, yeah, sure enough, there wasn't a sense of catharsis, and even he said that it doesn't feel like they should have been rewarded. So those two mainly, I suppose there was more catharsis than there wasn't in this sense, but yeah, sure enough, mainly it was due to Tony being insulted. He wasn't insulted in the restaurant except for the bride bribery attempt. Ironically, yeah, they tried to bribe him, which he had just done just a while before, just a bit before, which is why he was going to be aggressive until he was stopped. But um, I'm not saying there wasn't though a sense of catharsis. So sure enough, he ended up not playing there, although it was a bit of a confusing scene because I thought at first he said that he was going to play there, so he seemingly relented, but then Tony said, "We're leaving," and then they did leave. So I'm not sure if what they didn't show is him convincing him to leave or such. I'm not entirely sure. So it's a bit confusing there. There shouldn't be this confusion ideally, but anyway, but yeah, overall, it was fine, really. It did feel like there was a sense of balance there, in the sense that if they won't relent, then if, if they want to get what they want, if they just so they didn't get what they wanted, and if in a way it's like being paid. Obviously, I cannot believe that you could pay someone to play the piano in this case, but somehow not let them eat at your diner. Makes no sense. But yeah, so they do not get entertained. It's very simple. Yes, it makes sense. So that was well done as a scene. Sure enough, and it wasn't too over the top. I mean, obviously, if Tony went around smashing the entire restaurant, like I'm sure was happening in Goodfellas, that would have been over the top, and that's why I don't like Goodfellas, honestly. And there is no sense of sensibility in this sense, in the Goodfellas because of that. I honestly don't know how it's so highly rated. I Yeah, I mean it's seriously highly, way overrated. Like I cannot just you know. Um, but anyway, that's the thing. Now I'm commenting on the Green Book. So Green Book in this sense, yes, it's much more subtle, more sensible. It has good production value. It has good characterization, good a good evolution. So sensible evolution, as in just how things progress from one scene to another, how things happen. Good music as well when there's music. Good play, in the sense that like when he stole that gem, he told him to give it back, except he didn't, and then he made fun of him at the end by saying, yeah. So yeah, I can see how the audience likes it. I mean, it's a well balanced film. Sure, clearly they try to balance it well, and I suppose a good film does rely on a good balance. Otherwise, it would be Goodfellas. Yeah. So in the sense, yes, I liked it, but I didn't like it in the sense that so much, that it really, I don't know, it overwhelmed me as such. Just like documentaries don't overwhelm me at all. So in the sense, it was practically a documentary, except it was presented in a drama format. So it's one of those things, where I just it's a bit difficult to do in a sense. But otherwise, it's a well made film. I can so I do not have this. I do not come around and say this is unbelievably overrated. I can see where people and why people like it. It's I wouldn't be surprised if the critics liked it as well. I haven't read what they said so far, but I wouldn't be surprised. I liked it as well, but I didn't like it in the sense that it's like like V for Vendetta, where it's just so well done, so amazing. But that's because it's fictional. Obviously, when it comes to fiction, there's much more artistic license. So in this sense, yeah, sure enough, this was constrained, but there we go. This is what it is. It's reality in a movie format. In a sense, it's well done. It's a bit a pity though that they made this. The real ones died in 2013 apparently, so they made it after they died. It's a bit pity they didn't get to see it, in my opinion. It must have been interesting for them to see.